Baltimore city government facing crucial vacancies.
I think they should have seen this coming.
The key reason the city admits why they're struggling to fill these positions. A bill proposing reparation payments to people with cannabis convictions. The pushback from some calling it unfair, and how this bill raises questions on the priorities of city council. Testing data hidden to protect student privacy, but it's not the first time. New tonight, Fox 45 News Project Baltimore looks back at how it was done before and investigates the drastic differences.
We've got to do better.
There's no boundaries, no time of day. Doesn't matter if it's the afternoon, doesn't matter where you are.
Then our team takes a deep dive into the recent and seemingly random violent crime surging through Baltimore.
Live from WBFF in Baltimore, this is Fox 45 News at 10.
Good evening, I'm Kai Jackson.
And I'm Mary Bubala. Problem at City Hall. Leaders say Baltimore can't find people to fill some of its top positions across various departments.
They say the issue is top talent in the state doesn't want to move into Baltimore City.
We have had several candidates that have identified the residency requirement as a barrier in recruitment.
Well, Baltimore is dealing with deadly violence, struggling public schools, and unreliable city services as basic as recycling pickup. One community leader Fox 45 News spoke with says those are all factors keeping top talent away from the city.
Now we have team coverage tonight, starting with Fox 45's Keith Daniels and Baltimore's recruitment problems. Keith, what are you learning?
Well, Kai, the issue surfaced publicly at last night's City Council committee hearing, and tonight a closer look at why it seems the city is having difficulty with its recruiting.
At Baltimore City Hall, filling the vacancies. A number of top executive positions are open, including the Department of Public Works Director, the head of procurement, and fire chief. But according to the city's human resources director, Quentin Herbert, and city administrator, Faith Leach, despite enticing hiring incentives to attract top talent, they say the city faces a major hurdle: the city's requirement that executives live in Baltimore City.
I've had several candidates that have identified the residency requirement as a barrier in recruitment. In fact, we have one agency where we've been recruiting for a bureau head for quite some time, and a person has been acting in an interim capacity, and that person would be, quite frankly, the ideal candidate for the position. But they don't want to sell their house in the county to move into the city and start over again.
But Eurypsy Morgan,
They have to remove the residency requirement.
of the group Peace, People for Elected Accountability and Civic Engagement, says she's not surprised the city is finding it difficult to locate people willing to move to Baltimore.
I think it's a combination of things. I think one, it is the fact that, who wants to uproot their life if they don't have to, especially if they live right within driving distance. But then when you look at the reason why people are leaving the city, which is probably, I think, a reason why many people would not want to move into the city. Crime is, of course, the biggest factor, but also then quality of life.
Quality of life issues like reliable trash and recycling getting picked up without fail, an issue DPW has grappled with. At Tuesday night City Council committee meeting to talk about the vacant executive positions, city leaders did not talk about the issues of Baltimore as the reason why candidates don't want to live in the city. In fact, some leaders, including Councilwoman Danielle McCrae, was clear about why top executives should live in the city.
I know when you make money, you're spending it in the city.
Well, the hearing came after word that the mayor's communications director and chief of staff left their positions. Now, City Council President Nick Mosby said he learned about that through the media. Reporting tonight, Keith Daniels, Fox 45 News.
Keith, thanks. And as Keith mentioned, violent crime is a big issue that could keep people from wanting to move into Baltimore City. Now, a former police commissioner is saying the violence is getting out of control, impacting almost every part of the city.
And there is violence everywhere. And it used to be confined to certain neighborhoods that people knew where not to go, like you wouldn't be on Greenmount Avenue at 2:30 in the morning or something like that. But now it's extended throughout the city.
Well, coming up at 10:30, we will hear what the former commissioner says is behind the crime and the impact it's having on Baltimore really as a whole.
Now, some are questioning what city leaders are focused on and whether they need to turn their full attention to crime. Fox 45's Maxine Stryker continues our team coverage.
As crime continues to plague Baltimore City, our elected leaders focused on stopping it.
Crime is the #1 issue. Everybody knows it except our office holders.
On the council agenda Monday night, a bill sponsored by Christopher Burnett prohibiting the willful use of the incorrect name or pronouns of an individual under certain circumstances. On WBAL Radio's TJ Smith show, Smith wondering where the council's priorities lie.
Doesn't mean we can't do more than one thing at a time, but prioritize those things and make sure if we're going to have the conversation about how difficult, it is to do certain things like fight the crime in the schools, the education and everything. Let's make sure we're putting that as a top priority all the time. It has to be.
Callers also expressing concern.
We've had 300 murders a year in this city and however many shootings. We have failing schools being covered up by corruption. And we have far too many real victims, and that we don't need any more because people have their feelings hurt.
And this isn't the first time council members' priorities have been called into question this year. Councilman Ryan Dorsey's proposal in March to ban gas-powered leaf blowers received blowback.
Put your focus on the crime. The crime is sincerely out of hand.
Over the weekend, 23-year-old Fabian Sanchez Gonzalez was shot and killed during an armed robbery in Canton, Zeke Cohen's district.
And for me, I am committing to doing everything within my power to both hold the police department accountable, to bring the perpetrators to justice.
Community leader Pastor P.M. Smith questioning why Cohen isn't calling for the criminals to be held accountable.
He's holding the wrong people accountable. Go get the criminals.
A similar story played out in Annapolis this session as a bill limiting legal gun owners got the green light.
We're attacking folks that are doing the right thing, having a classroom hours, going to get the certification, and are more cognizant about the challenges if they are able to use their firearm, but being in a situation if they do have to, that it would be there versus the illegal firearms. We're doing things kind of backwards.
But tough on crime legislation failed to make it through once again, leaving Baltimore hoping for change for another year. Maxine Stryker, Fox 45 News.
Well, we want to hear from you. Do you think current city leadership can fix the crime problem? So far, 99% of those who have voted say no. Head to foxbaltimore.com/vote to weigh in.
More questions for city leaders when it comes to how Maryland and Baltimore City will use the revenue from legalized recreational marijuana.
Fox 45 Jeff Abel joins us live with a closer look at where the money will go and the concerns some are raising about it. Jeff?
You know, the new law is very specific. The millions of dollars generated in new marijuana revenue cannot go to law enforcement, but instead it must go to the communities most impacted by marijuana arrests. In a matter of weeks, the doors to Maryland's marijuana market will swing wide open, and millions of dollars worth of taxes and fees generated by legal marijuana will be returned to local jurisdictions. And according to state law, the revenue can only be used to benefit low-income residents and those disproportionately harmed by the cannabis prohibition and enforcement of the past 20 years.
Conservative suggestion or thought was that it would generate about $20 million for the city of Baltimore for the specific purpose of creating equity and reparations, which is what reparations are. It's creating an equitable response to a wrong of long standing.
I mean, it's manifestly unjust.
At the Heritage Foundation, Giancarlo Camparo questions the new law's intent.
But to say that people who violated the laws and brutalized their own communities should be given payment because of that is shockingly unjust.
Last week, the City Council approved a measure which calls for the appointment of a 17-member commission, which will advise the city where to target the funding. 3 of the commission members would be prior marijuana offenders. Council members say they hope the funding will assist struggling communities.
The intent behind this legislation was to try to identify organizations that were actually doing the work in communities, but traditionally are not funded.
But while Councilman Robert Stokes supports the legislation, he still seems skeptical.
We are checking the box again because we're going back with naming some of the same organizations that has done nothing in some of the communities that I represent.
And I don't feel like we're checking boxes. I feel like we're moving government forward.
Well, the city's own law department initially opposed the commission legislation. The final approval is expected from the city council later this month. We are live. Jeff Abel, Fox 45 News.
Jeff, thank you. Fox 45 News also questioned the Safe Streets program and how it spends city dollars. The case of a man killed more than 3 years ago is now raising more questions about how Safe Streets operates. The family of the victim shares some sharp criticism for Safe Streets.
Has your view of the Safe Streets program changed throughout this?
Absolutely. Oh, yes. Yes. My belief is that our city government is financing a criminal enterprise. I believe that within my heart. Our city government is so invested in it that it's turning a blind eye to what it really is.
Well, Fox 45 News has been investigating the Safe Streets program for years, and we've been working to find out more about the program's finances and the ex-convicts hired to keep the peace. Earlier this year, after Fox 45 News threatened to sue, the city finally handed over contracts with the nonprofits operating the Safe Streets sites. The contracts revealed the nonprofits are required to pay for criminal background checks for all employees, contractors, and volunteers. The Safe Streets worker charged in that murder case was found not guilty back in March. He had a prior criminal record, including second-degree murder, assault, drug, and gun convictions when Safe Streets hired him back in 2019. And that's not the only questionable case. Prosecutors say in 2020, Safe Streets worker Ronald Alexander told officers he was working for Safe Streets during a traffic stop and let go. During a federal search at his home a few days later, police found guns and drugs. In his plea agreement, Alexander confessed to taking drugs from people in the community as part of his work for Safe Streets.
Well, those two cases prompted Fox 45 News to send questions to the mayor's office of neighborhood safety and engagement, which is MONSE, which operates Safe Street. What's the city's screening process or policies when it comes to hiring Safe Streets employees? Is there a threshold of violence for certain crimes that prohibits people from being hired? MONSE tells Fox 45 News it provides oversight and technical assistance to the nonprofits when it comes to hiring, but not directly explaining their role in employee screening. Last night, MONSE posted this to social media, advertising a monthly hiring event. Fox 45 News will continue to demand answers about the Safe Streets program. You can find Mackenzie Frost's latest report on our website, foxbaltimore.com.
Well, after another unsettled day this evening, finally, some of the showers are abating, but we still do have clouds and a little bit of clearing trying to mix in there. It's 44 at BWI, 46 at Aberdeen, temperatures in the low to mid 40s elsewhere across the area. And we even have a little bit of a wind chill, so it feels a couple degrees colder than that. So be aware you may need a heavier jacket tomorrow morning. Look, by tomorrow afternoon, though, here we go again. More of those showers popping. I'm going to let you know when we finally break this gloomy pattern. It's coming soon. My Weather Authority forecast.
Still ahead on Fox 45 News at 10 o'clock tonight. State standardized test scores redacted, making it harder to know how schools are performing. Fox 45 News Project Baltimore finds it's not the first time and shows you why this time many say it's different. The Navy's latest recruiting pitch is raising some questions. Just who is it aimed for and the backlash it's receiving from some. And coming up tonight at 10:30 on Fox 45, a new proposal from the City Council to hold agency leaders accountable, the office that could be pulled from the mayor's control.
The Maryland State Department of Education facing questions over transparency after redacting state test scores and making less information available to the public.
As Project Baltimore's Chris Papps explains, this isn't the first time the state has changed the way test scores are reported, but last time it was handled very differently.
But for the 12-13 school year...
The date was June 21st. 2011.
Today is a big ending for me.
At this Maryland State Board of Education meeting, Dr. Nancy Grasmick, after 20 years, stepped down as the nation's longest-serving state superintendent of schools.
I've been very privileged. Thank you.
But Grasmick's retirement was not the only noteworthy event that came out of this meeting. It was also on that day the Maryland State Department of Education announced new standards for reporting student test results to the public. According to state archives, Dr. Grasmick wrote this letter to the board members explaining the new guidelines. This PowerPoint presentation was also delivered to the school board. The presentation explained that Maryland would begin redacting more test score data to protect student privacy in order to align with federal recommendations that were updated 1 year earlier in 2010. Board members were told exactly what the changes were and why certain test results that had previously been public would now be redacted. In other words, Grasmick told the public and state leaders what her department was doing and why, to align with new federal guidelines. Compare that to what just happened in March, when current state superintendent Mohammed Chaudhry's administration changed how the scores are reported, redacting many of the results. But this time, there was no presentation to the board. There are no new federal guidelines and no input from state leaders, including Governor Wes Moore.
We did not.
That is how the governor responded when Fox 45 asked if his office knew MSDE planned to change how data is released to the public, making less information available.
The fact that there is not the level of coordination between the Department of Education and the governor's office is something that needs to be fixed. It's something that needs to be addressed. We've got to do better when it comes to being able to present accountable, transparent results in our public education system.
President Crawford?
Yes, I'd like to say something.
The president of the Maryland State Board of Education, Clarence Crawford, told Fox 45 he was not made aware either, but he said he stands by the superintendent, even though Crawford added he believes sharing data with the public is important.
For we believe that you can only move forward when you share data and you begin with a true baseline. We look forward to working
But
with
this is
you.
what just happened to the state website is not sharing data, it's removing data from the website.
This comes after the agency.
Project Baltimore broke this story last month. And despite our many attempts, the state superintendent will not agree to an interview. Chaudhry, according to his contract, earned $310,000 last year.
Mr. Chaudhry, Chris Papps with Fox 45.
But when we went to a board meeting to get answers,
removing test scores from the website,
he locked himself behind a door. The decision to provide less information to the public is raising questions over motive, whether Chaudhry's administration is trying to hide how poorly some schools are performing. Some, including Senator Justin Reedy, says lawmakers should hold a hearing to question the superintendent.
It looks to me like a government agency that found some reasons why they could excuse why they want to take data down that's embarrassing.
MSDE further redacted the data after Project Baltimore exposed how 23 schools in Baltimore City and 7 in Baltimore County had 0 students test proficient in math.
I want to be able to get these children in school.
Compare that to what was happening in 2011, when Dr. Grasmick changed how MSDE reports test results. Education Week had recently ranked Maryland public schools #1 in America. I'm Chris Papst, and this is Project Baltimore.
When you step out of your house, you're in danger in this town. Doesn't matter where you are.
Sharp criticism of Baltimore City's crime fight from a former police commissioner. Why he says crime could impact anyone at any time.
The Navy trying new ways to attract young people to the armed services. I'm Kayla Gaskins in Washington with why some experts say this new tactic might backfire.
And guess what? Not a whole lot of change on the way for tomorrow. Maybe slight baby steps with high temperatures getting into the low 60s. There are going to be some showers for May the 4th. So you're going to need some long sleeves. You're going to need some long pants. And you're probably going to also need some rain gear. You're going to need your raincoat and your boots and your umbrella. I'm going to let you know when you can get rid of all that and go for the shorts and short sleeves. And if it's in time for the weekend in my Weather Authority forecast.
The U.S. military exploring new ways to attract young recruits as they struggle to fill the ranks.
But a new approach is stirring some controversy in Washington. National correspondent Kayla Gaskins explains.
Active duty sailor, yeoman second class Joshua Kelly doubles as a drag queen. Stage name, Harpy Daniels. Kelly is the Navy's first digital ambassador, posting TikToks about the military's welcoming culture to LGBTQ+ sailors. A Navy official telling the Daily Caller this was part of a 6-month campaign to reach a wider audience as the military struggles with recruiting Gen Z. Senator Eric Schmidt worries it will backfire.
It's really divisive, and I think infusing politics into our military is really destructive. It is driving people away. We've heard from military members who've come forward. They don't like it.
Criticism of the military's partnership with Harpy Daniels, echoing Bud Light's controversial collaboration with trans activist and TikTok star Dylan Mulvaney.
I got some Bud Lights for us.
Both campaigns using inclusivity to broaden their reach at the risk of alienating their base. Backlash from the Mulvaney partnership causing sales to drop 21.4% compared with the same period last year, as competitors Coors Light and Miller Lite increased sales by about the same margin. Parent company Anheuser-Busch undergoing a marketing reset, aiming new ads at traditional customers. And gifting a case of Bud Light to every employee of an Anheuser-Busch wholesaler. Navy veteran Cully Stimson worries the Harpy-Daniels partnership will have a similar negative impact on recruiting.
If the Navy thinks that that is going to attract the type of person that wants to serve in uniform in the Navy, they're just so woke and so missing what people who want to serve want. I think it shows an abysmal lack of judgment by senior leaders in the military.
The Navy is anticipated to miss this year's goal by 8,000 recruits. In Washington, I'm Kayla Gaskins.
And that brings us to our question of the day. Do you think the U.S. military is becoming too political? You can vote right now by scanning the QR code on your screen. That will take you to our website, foxbaltimore.com.
The newly released national report card shows students across the nation struggling. A look at the results and how Baltimore City fits in.
I'm Autrell Najar in Washington with how the federal government is trying to get ahead of artificial intelligence, as experts warn it could quickly disrupt everyday life.
We are following three big stories at 10:30.
There's a growing list of experts issuing warnings on artificial intelligence, why they're concerned it could disrupt your everyday life.
Governor Wes Moore signing several bills into law today. A closer look at the new laws and why some legislators are calling one of them discriminatory.
A former Baltimore City Police Commissioner sounds off about the crime in Baltimore City.
When you have innocent people being murdered midday in your business districts, you have a tremendous problem on your hands.
Ed Norris saying crime is happening anywhere in the city at any time.
Fox 45's Amy Simpson has a closer look at the unpredictability of Baltimore's recent violence.
In just the last few days, we've seen more instances of crime sparing no zip code or time of day. It was just before 4:30 Sunday afternoon.
There's a brazen robbery that happened in daytime
when 23-year-old Fabian Sanchez Gonzalez was shot during an armed robbery at the T-Mobile in Canton. The store employee later died from his injuries. Last month, also on a Sunday, two teens were shot along Pratt Street, steps from the Inner Harbor. Cell phone video captured the aftermath as crowds ran.
you know, the shooting happened and then we had to run.
This woman said she was caught in that chaos last month, leaving a family dinner downtown, speaking to Fox 45 News anonymously the next day.
My husband, at that time, he was trying to gank me, but still pushing my child in our stroller. So that was the startling part.
In December, the day after Christmas, a man was shot and killed at the Mondawmin MTA Metro stop. And almost exactly 1 year ago, May 4th, 2022, this citizen video revealed a bloody T-shirt and police tape on the steps of the Hippodrome Theater after a man was shot as a performance was underway inside.
And there is violence everywhere. And it used to be confined to certain neighborhoods that people knew where not to go, like you wouldn't be on Greenmount Avenue at 2:30 in the morning or something like that. But now it's extended throughout the city.
Former Police Commissioner Ed Norris pointing to a problem without concern for the place or time.
There's no boundaries, no time of day. It doesn't matter if it's the afternoon, doesn't matter where you are. You can be the victim of a horrible, violent crime.
Norris also said people are leaving Baltimore in droves. Crime, he says, is to blame.
When you step out of your house, you're in danger in this town. Doesn't matter where you are.
As for who pulled the trigger inside of that T-Mobile store on Sunday afternoon, we do know police are looking for 2 suspects. Today, all BPD would say is detectives are actively investigating. Amy Simpson, Fox 45 News.
Another shocking act of violence happened just last night. Police say a pizza delivery driver was shot in the face and leg outside Druid Hill Park just before 11:30 while he was delivering an order. Police say the suspect shot the victim, then stole his car and drove away in it. Police aren't saying if the victim's vehicle has been found, and they haven't given any information about possible suspects. Well, that shooting is reminiscent of the murder of 51-year-old wife and mother Cheryl McCormick last year. Police say she was helping a friend deliver food for DoorDash when they were robbed. They say the suspects tried to steal McCormick's phone before shooting and killing her. A 16-year-old was arrested in connection with her murder.
Baltimore's Public Safety and Government Operations Committee holds a meeting on possibly bringing back CityStat as an independent office. It started in 1999 while Martin O'Malley was mayor. The office uses a data-driven approach to track issues like crime and public works requests. Councilman Mark Conway used to serve as deputy director of CityStat and sees the value of it.
Part of the reason why I put this bill forward is because I believe wholeheartedly that CityStat is part of the fabric of city government and is part of an effective and efficient and smart government. And the beautiful thing about it is that CityStat is very simple. The idea is to use data that we already have to solve problems and to find innovative ways to address issues that we've been dealing with for some time or new issues that arise.
It's currently part of the Mayor's Office of Performance and Innovation. If the change is approved, CityStat would have a new director, budget, and staff.
Governor Wes Moore signed 3 new bills into law today. The first bill is the cannabis reform legislation, creating the framework to legalize recreational marijuana starting on July 1st. Second, the Trans Health Equity Act, requiring the Maryland Medical Assistance Program to provide gender-affirming care. And finally, the Reproductive Freedom Act, a response to the Supreme Court striking down Roe v. Wade. This new law prevents the state from restricting abortion rights.
These ceremonies are really focusing on legislation, but really what they're about is they're about people. The people of our state who have helped us to make this one of the most productive legislative sessions for any administration at any time, period.
Maryland voters will decide on adding a constitutional amendment next year to enshrine abortion protections in the state's constitution.
When it comes to the Trans Health Equity Act, some lawmakers believe it's discriminatory. The state's Medicaid program already covers gender transitioning. The new law will expand that coverage to include treatments like hair alterations, voice modifications, and face and neck alterations.
It seems discriminatory to utilize Medicaid money for cosmetic surgeries, fertility services that aren't offered to other people on Medicaid.
During the session, opponents like you just saw here, Delegate Kathy Shalega, pointed out that for other low-income Marylanders, there are pages of services which Medicare does not pay for, like dentures for adults and treatment for many eating disorders. The new law takes effect January 1st.
The National Assessment of Educational Progress released another report card today, and this one looked at 8th grade scores in the U.S. history and civics. Both are on the decline, dropping by 5 and 2 points respectively. The same was true for math and reading in the fall. Officials say the decline was largely due to COVID-19 pandemic disruptions. Some advocates feel the numbers should be a wake-up call.
When you look at all these scores in context, they paint a picture that is painfully clear that says our current system is not working. It is not that students are failing school, it's that our schools are failing students.
U.S. Education Secretary Miguel Cardona reacted to the scores earlier today. He said in a statement, banning history books and censoring educators from teaching these important subjects does our students a disservice and will move America in the wrong direction. Well, we're seeing those problems here in Baltimore City. A recent Project Baltimore report shows 23 schools where 0 students among those tested are proficient in math. During a city council hearing on the issue last week, city school CEO Dr. Sonia Santelises painted Baltimore as part of a bigger problem. Fox 45 News pressed her on that. Take a listen.
Do you think that the parents of these kids in these 23 schools care that other students are failing when their students are the ones that are struggling to succeed? What do you say to families who are dealing with this, and especially when you say that you knew this was going to happen?
Well, we knew, Mackenzie, that the math was a challenging area. One of the things that we've said to parents is we have doubled down on tutoring, on after-school opportunities.
Fox 45's Project Baltimore has done extensive reporting on those test scores and the other failures within some Baltimore City public schools. You can find it on our website, foxbaltimore.com/Project Baltimore.
The manhunt for the man who opened fire inside of an Atlanta medical office is over. Police say the suspect, 24-year-old Dion Patterson, killed a woman and injured 4 others. They say he carjacked a vehicle and used it to run from police. Now, police say they found the suspect in a neighboring county.
Thanks to the highly trained police officers across our region, we are able to bring this suspect into custody without further harm. He will be charged and stand trial for his crimes.
Authorities say Patterson is a former Coast Guard member. A Coast Guard spokesperson says he was discharged from active duty in January. But police haven't released a possible motive at this time or said whether the suspect was connected to any of the victims.
Taking a look now at the Fox box. Top left, federal prosecutors are close to deciding whether to charge Hunter Biden, the president's son, with tax and gun-related violations. According to the Washington Post, Hunter's attorneys met with David Weiss at the DOJ last week. There's no timeline for a decision.
On the top right, GOP lawmakers sent a subpoena to the FBI requesting information on a whistleblower's claims that Joe Biden was involved in a bribery scheme while vice president. The allegation is there and was an exchange of money from a foreign national or policy decisions.
Bottom left, ATF overpaid about 100 employees to the tune of $20 million. That's according to the U.S. Office of Special Counsel. An ATF spokesperson says the agency is working to resolve the matter.
On the bottom right, Senate Democrats are working on a proposal to limit the flow of U.S. tech to China to keep America competitive. Majority Leader Chuck Schumer says some Republicans have shown interest. However, the GOP's John Thune of South Dakota questions the price tag of the proposed bill.
Well, Microsoft's chief economist joins the list of experts issuing warnings about advancements in artificial intelligence, disrupting economies, politics, and really aspects of everyday life.
National correspondent Atra El-Nashar has a closer look.
AI progressing at a breakneck pace has experts in government and technology sounding alarm bells much sooner than they expected. No better example than Jeffrey Hinton, known as the godfather of AI for developing fundamental AI technology. He worked at Google up until this week. Here's what he said about the company's work just a couple of months ago.
They're extremely cautious about AI because they've got this wonderful search engine that gives you the answers you want to see, and they can't afford to risk that.
Now resigned from Google, saying this.
I want to sort of blow the whistle and say we should worry seriously about how we stop these things getting control over us.
Advancements in AI like chatbots, prompting comparisons to other society-altering upgrades in tech, like the proliferation of social media, but with higher stakes.
It knows how to program, so it'll figure out ways of getting around restrictions we put on it. It'll figure out ways of manipulating people to do what it wants.
In a statement to the New York Times, Google's chief scientist, Jeff Dean, says, "We remain committed to a responsible approach to AI. We're continually learning to understand emerging risks while also innovating boldly." The Federal Trade Commission also trying to balance support for innovation with user protection. In an op-ed for The Times, FTC Chair Lina Khan lays out some economic risks too, like AI being used to facilitate price fixing or reinforcing market dominance of large firms. Meanwhile, IBM announcing the company expects to pause hiring for 7,800 positions that could be replaced by AI. On Thursday, Vice President Kamala Harris and senior administration officials will meet with the CEOs of Google, Microsoft, OpenAI, and Anthropic.
A White House official tells me they let these executives know they aim to have a frank conversation about the current and near-term risks of AI and how they can work together on the issue, echoing the president's call on companies to make sure their products are safe before they're public. In Washington, I'm Atrel Nashar.
Democrats and Republicans joining forces to take on big tech in hopes of making it safer for kids. I'm Scott Thuman in Washington with a look at how they want to change social media.
Could the president handle the debt ceiling on his own? A controversial strategy some are saying may allow him to bypass Congress to avoid a financial crisis.